And I don't want you to think that the 1920s, I know we just talked about the Ku Klux Klan, that it's just full of hatred. It's not entirely that way. There are a lot of different groups of people pushing for their own kinds of ideas or change into our culture or freedom. A great example for would be the young. Young people in the 1920s really embraced something that you can see up here in the upper right called the numerality. And the idea here is that we're young. We don't have to be like those old, doddering old people, our parents and grandparents who tell us that we can only behave a certain way. Instead, the young people say, no, we don't have to do that. We can live our own way with our people, whoever we want. We can behave the way we want to behave. We're smart, we're capable, we got jobs, we got money, we can do our own thing. An example of this kind of numerality, this high value on personal freedom, was a group of women. It's a small number of women, not most women, a small number of women who become a symbol of this kind of new freedom. They're called flappers. Totally unconventional young women. Just change the expectations. And again, they're not the everyday woman. 95% or whatever it would be of women are traditional, but the flapper becomes a symbol of this new morality because she's so different. She cuts her hair wicked short. She might smoke or drink or go out by herself without a male partner. She might stay out late. She might not get married. She might have premarital sex. She might use birth control. She might wear makeup and silk stockings. She might model and a host of other things. I mean, look at this one right here. Look at this crazy lady getting arrested because she's showing too much legs and her shoulders in her little revealing bathing suit. That's what happened to her. Too revealing of a bathing suit, getting arrested because these flappers are challenging traditional morality. Now that makes older people, usually, and in the case of the 1920s it's true, really upset. Why do we have all these women going around attending college, not getting married, living their own lives? So what we end up seeing are women or traditional people fighting back. And the older Americans, their values were rooted mostly in religion and primarily Christianity. So when they begin to push back against this new morality, what they're going to say is, we want to push back with our own religious values, make a space for us again. And they're going to turn to something called fundamentalism to do it. Fundamentalists believe that their religion is correct. It is literally true. It is the only truth. And in many cases, it is, as written in their holy book, completely true. Many Christian fundamentalists, for example, believe that what is written in the Bible is literally true the way it happens. So I'll give you an example. In the 1920s, there was a group of fundamentalists who believe in creationism. A ton of people believed in creationism, that God created the earth in 7 days, exactly the way the Bible said it. That's it. No more conversation. Well, a bunch of other people were saying, dude, that Darwin, evolution, come on, that doesn't. These two things don't fit. So fundamentalists were having creationism taught in school. And some Americans said that that's not right. That's not fair for you to say that that's the only way. They wanted to push back. A group called the American Civil Liberties Union said, we're going to look for a teacher who's going to teach Darwinism, teach evolution, and we want that teacher to essentially go to jail to point out this difference between the new morality, freedom, choice, opportunity, and fundamentalist reaction, trying to keep things the way they were. This really upsets fundamentalists, as you might imagine, right? That traditional ideas are being challenged. This teacher, guy named John Scopes, he signs up, he goes to teach in Tennessee, he's arrested, put on trial, he loses, goes to jail. The Scopes monkey trial, essentially, while testing a law that bans the teaching of evolution, does more than that. It says we've got a real issue in the 1920s between where we want our culture to head. Do we want it to go where the new morality is going, or do we want it to return to traditional values? And there was a real tension to that. The last big change in the 1920s has little to do with what we've talked about, but actually kind of overarches over all of it. It's something that the poor embraced, and something that the wealthy embraced, something that women were embracing, most Americans at the time embraced, in large quantities, alcohol. And alcohol was tearing our society apart. I don't think I can clearly explain just how devastatingly poisonous it had become to our society. I don't care what you think about drinking or not drinking. I don't care about your stance on underage drinking, overage drinking. That's not what I'm getting at. What I'm talking about is incredibly high rates of domestic violence, marital rape, child abuse, homelessness, joblessness, disease, all kinds of crime tied to alcoholism. Not just drinking, but alcoholism. The number of alcoholics in America was staggering. It was poisoning our country. Americans begin, and about half of Americans, slightly more than half of Americans, pushed hard for something called prohibition. And it went by state to state by state by state, people trying to prohibit the production, sale, and distribution of alcohol, trying to find some way to stop this poison from creating more alcoholics. It took some time, but as the 1920s dawned, the 18th Amendment was passed. July 1st, 1920. And that idea here was that we were going to dramatically increase the police powers of our government in an attempt to essentially combat the impact of alcohol. So we see the 18th Amendment passing, and we see the power of the police rise incredibly high. Over 540,000 Americans are arrested during the time of Prohibition. That's a tremendous number. And what that shows you is that a ton of Americans didn't stop drinking. We spent, and you can see it here on this chart, here's the amount of money we spent on alcohol and drug prohibition. Nothing, 1920. Boom! Huge upsurge in what we're spending on it. And when prohibition comes to an end, boom! Right back down again. Stays kind of low until we hit the 1970s. And there's a push again for fighting illegal drugs. And it continues to skyrocket, the amount of money that we spend on enforcement of drug and alcohol, because Americans viewed it as really hurting our society. American response to prohibition is mixed. Some people believe it's going to really reduce, and it does reduce unemployment, domestic violence, and poverty. It does do that. A bunch of other Americans just ignore the law entirely, so they go to secret bars called speakeasies. They buy booze there. They produce booze in the countryside and smuggle it in, called moonshine. Bootleggers smuggle this booze in. Organized crime, the mob. Hey, how you doing? I'm making an over. You can't resist. You're never going to be able to say no to me, huh? Do what I got to tell you to do. The mob organizes to distribute alcohol and prostitution at speakeasies, this bootlegging, and it's going to continue on for 10 years. More than 10 years, until the 21st Amendment is going to repeal prohibition in 1933. So there's the cultural change that we talked about, that we're going to see in the 1920s. We're going to do more work with this in class, obviously. So hope you did well on your quiz.